Have you ever sat there, replaying a moment over and over, something someone said, something they did, and wondered why it still hurts, even after months or years? It could be your partner rolling their eyes during an argument, your parents never really listening when you tried to speak, or that one friend who always made you feel like you weren't enough, but in a way no one else ever noticed. Maybe you've told yourself, "I'm just too sensitive," or whispered inside, "Why does this always happen to me?" You've been hurt more than once, and somewhere along the way you started believing that's just how life is. You've been strong for so long, but deep inside, maybe you're still bleeding. They hurt you. You tried to forget, but the pain never left, because it wasn't theirs to heal. It was yours. And here's the truth. You were never meant to stay broken. You were meant to become whole, to stop blaming yourself for letting them in, to stop thinking that protecting yourself means hardening your heart, to stop feeling controlled by your past or defined by someone else's actions. Because emotional scars don't mean you're weak, they mean you're human. And once you begin to understand your pain, not just feel it, once you recognize that it was never about being too sensitive, but about not being seen, not being safe, not being loved the way you needed to be, that's when something shifts. You stop reliving old wounds. You stop forgiving the same kind of people. You start healing from the inside out. Carl Jung would tell you, you are not broken, you're unhealed, and there's a difference. This is where the healing begins. This is how you finally become someone who feels safe, whole, and unbreakable. And once you do, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Some wounds don't bleed. They don't leave bruises. They live in silence, tucked behind polite smiles and carefully chosen words. But they're there, in the way you flinch when someone raises their voice, in how quickly you apologize, even when you did nothing wrong, in the way your heart races before a difficult conversation, or how you keep people at arm's length, afraid they'll leave like the others did. These are the hidden wounds we carry, the betrayals we never fully processed, the shame we absorbed when someone made us feel small, the ache of being ignored when we needed love the most. Maybe it was a parent who never saw you, not really, or a relationship where your boundaries were crossed so many times. You forgot you were allowed to have any. Maybe it was that one moment, a look, a phrase, a silence that still echoes in the background of your mind. You kept going, you survived, but survival isn't the same as healing. And sometimes it's hard to tell where your pain ends and your personality begins. You might find yourself asking, why do I attract people who take advantage of me? Why do I shrink when I need to speak up? Why do I keep forgiving the same kind of hurt? The truth is, many people carry emotional pain like it's a personality trait, not because they're weak, but because they were never shown how to let it go. And even when you think you've moved on, it finds a way to creep back in your thoughts, in your relationships, in how you see yourself. You begin to question your worth. You wonder if you were the problem. And somewhere deep down, a quiet voice whispers, maybe I deserved it. But here's what that voice doesn't know yet. Healing is possible. And not the kind of healing that feels like a band-aid on a broken bone. Real healing. The kind that helps you see clearly, feel deeply, and rebuild from the inside. Carl Jung understood this. He didn't offer cliches or quick fixes. He offered something much deeper, a mirror. One that reflects your pain, yes, but also your strength, your potential, and the parts of yourself you were taught to hide. According to Jung, you are not just the pain you carry. You are the one who can transform it, not by ignoring it, but by understanding it. And when you begin that journey, when you finally stop running from the past and start listening to what it's been trying to teach you, that's when something incredible begins to unfold. This is the first step toward healing. Not numbing, not pretending, but finally seeing yourself, all of yourself, with clarity and compassion. Because when you learn how to face the pain, you no longer have to live inside it. And that changes everything. So, what does it really mean to face the pain? Carl Jung believed that most of our emotional suffering doesn't come from what happened to us, but from what we've buried inside because of it. He called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we were taught to reject, suppress, or be ashamed of. Our anger, our fear, our longing to be loved, even our voice, our power, our boundaries, they often get pushed into the shadow if the world around us tells us they're too much. And yet everything you've hidden is still there, waiting, not to haunt you, but to be understood. You see, the shadow doesn't make you broken. It makes you whole. But only when you're willing to see it, to listen to it. When you don't, you end up living your life on autopilot, repeating old patterns, letting the past play out in the present, forgiving people who never changed, apologizing for having needs, and calling it normal. Jung called the process of becoming whole individuation, a journey of understanding your unconscious patterns, integrating your shadow, and discovering who you really are underneath the hurt. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about finally meeting yourself. Because here's the thing. Healing doesn't mean turning into someone else. It means becoming the version of you who was never allowed to exist. The one who sets boundaries without guilt. The one who can say, "That hurt me," and not feel ashamed. The one who doesn't bend just to be loved, because they already know their worth. Jung believed the unconscious, the deep, hidden part of your mind, holds the key to that transformation. And when you become aware of what's been operating silently within you, the fears you've inherited, the beliefs you never questioned, the wounds you've mistaken for personality, you finally reclaim your power. Think of it like this. 1. You're not just reacting to today, you're reacting to years of unseen pain. 2. You're not too sensitive, you're carrying unspoken stories. 3. You're not lost, you're just disconnected from your inner self. And the moment you start reconnecting, everything starts to make sense. That's what healing through awareness looks like. Not quick, not easy, but life-changing. Carl Jung didn't offer a shortcut, he offered a compass. One that doesn't point outside of you, but inward. And once you begin following it, you realize something. The people who hurt you don't get to define your story. Your trauma doesn't get the final word. Your shadow doesn't make you less. It makes you real. So as we move forward, remember, this isn't about controlling the world around you. It's about understanding the world within you. Because once you do that, you stop being a prisoner of your pain, and you start becoming the author of your peace. There's a quiet moment in every healing journey. A pause, a breath, a flicker of awareness. And in that stillness, something shifts. You realize that maybe, just maybe, you've been carrying pain that was never yours to begin with. That the anger, the guilt, the self-blame, it was learned. It was given to you by people who couldn't love you the way you needed. And you took it on, because back then, you didn't know better. But now you do. This is the moment Carl Jung called consciousness, the turning point where you stop asking, "Why did they hurt me?" and start asking, "Why did I believe I deserved it?" That's not weakness. That's awakening. Because the truth is, most of the pain we carry isn't from what happened. It's from what we told ourselves after it happened. You told yourself you were unlovable, that your needs were too much, that if you could just be better, quieter, more agreeable, maybe then they'd stay. Maybe then they'd treat you differently. And so you gave away your power, slowly, silently, until you forgot you even had any to begin with. But here's what Jung helps us remember. The only power someone has over you is the power you give them. That sigh you've been holding in, that boundary you never voiced, that self-worth you've been waiting for someone else to validate, it was yours all along. You were never helpless. You were hurt. There's a difference. And once you recognize that, the cycle starts to break. 1. You stop explaining your feelings to people committed to misunderstanding you. 2. You stop hoping someone else will finally say the words you needed to hear. 3. You stop shrinking yourself to avoid being alone and realize solitude is better than betrayal. Because taking back your power doesn't look loud. It looks like calm, like clarity, like choosing peace over people-pleasing. It looks like knowing that your worth isn't up for debate, not even in your own mind. This is the moment of awakening, not a dramatic transformation, but a quiet remembering of who you were before the world convinced you otherwise. You start to understand that healing isn't about becoming invincible. It's about no longer needing others to validate your value. You still feel, you still care, but you no longer abandon yourself to be loved. And in that space, you become unshakable. So let's keep walking this path. Because now that you've remembered your power, it's time to learn how to protect it. Not with walls, but with wisdom. Awareness is the first step. But what comes next is how you protect that awareness. Not by isolating, not by shutting down, but by building something sacred, emotional boundaries. Boundaries aren't barriers. They're bridges. They connect you to yourself and to others, without losing either in the process. When you've spent years people-pleasing, over-explaining, or shrinking yourself to keep the peace, boundaries feel unfamiliar. They feel like guilt, like fear, like what if they leave? But here's what no one told you. Every time you abandon your needs to keep someone, you lose yourself a little more. And healing is about coming back to yourself. Carl Jung spoke often of the inner child, the part of us still frozen in those old wounds, the part that learned love was conditional, that being good meant being silent, that needing too much meant being left behind. That child is still in there, and they're not asking you to be perfect. They're asking you to protect them. That's what boundaries do. They say, I love you, but I will not tolerate being disrespected. I understand you're hurting, but I'm not your punching bag. I care, but not at the cost of betraying myself. Because when you don't set the standard for how you should be treated, someone else will. And it's usually someone who benefits from your silence. Here's the hard truth. The people who get the most upset when you set boundaries are the ones who were benefiting from your lack of them. But that's not your problem to solve. Your job isn't to fix everyone. It's to stop breaking yourself to keep them comfortable. And no, it won't always feel good. At first, saying no might feel like a loss, but in reality, it's a return to your self-worth. Because self-worth isn't just how you feel about yourself in the mirror or on good days. It's how you treat yourself when you're tempted to tolerate less than you deserve. It's staying true to yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're afraid of being misunderstood, even when love asks for more than you can safely give. This is how you build your inner fortress, not made of stone, but of self-respect. Not to shut the world out, but to let the right people in and keep the wrong ones out. Boundaries don't make you cold, they make you clear. They say, I have finally learned to love myself enough to choose peace, even if it means choosing it alone. And that's when everything changes. Because once you know how to protect your energy, you stop leaking it to people who never deserved it. So let's keep going. Because now that you've built your fortress, it's time to release what's been weighing you down from the inside. It's time to talk about letting go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen, or excusing the people who hurt you. It means this. You're no longer willing to carry their weight on your shoulders, not because it didn't matter, but because you do. And that's where real forgiveness begins. Not with them, with you. You see, most of us think holding on keeps us strong, that staying angry keeps us safe. But over time, the anger hardens. It turns into armor, and that armor starts to trap us in the very pain we swore we'd never feel again. Carl Jung said that what you resist persists, and nowhere is that more true than in your emotional world. The resentment, the shame, the endless replays of moments you wish you could change. You hold on to them because you want justice. You want understanding. You want closure. But healing doesn't come from someone else saying, "I'm sorry." It comes from you saying, "I'm done." Done carrying guilt that was never yours. Done believing their actions say something about your worth. Done living in a story that keeps you stuck in chapter 3, when your soul is ready to write chapter 10. Letting go is scary, because it feels like losing something. But what you're actually doing is freeing yourself from something that's been draining your spirit for far too long. You're choosing peace over punishment, relief over resentment, freedom over familiar pain. And forgiveness? Forgiveness is not a favor you do for them. It's a gift you give yourself. It's the moment you say, "What happened hurt me. It shaped me, but it no longer controls me." And in that moment, you start to reclaim your power. You stop being a character in their story, and you become the author of your own. So how do you let go? You feel what you've been avoiding. You write the letter you'll never send. You sit in the silence and say, "I still matter." You journal, you breathe, you cry, you rest, and eventually, you rise. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because when you truly let go, you're not left with nothing. You're left with you, whole, wiser, still soft, but no longer shattered. This is what liberation feels like. And once you've tasted it, you never go back to begging for peace from the people who took it. So now that we've cleared the weight of what was, let's talk about what comes next. Let's talk about what it means to live from this place of wholeness. Because the final stage of healing isn't just surviving pain, it's becoming untouchable. So what does it mean to become untouchable? It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It doesn't mean nothing ever bothers you. And it definitely doesn't mean you become cold or disconnected. No, it means you've rooted yourself so deeply in truth that no storm can uproot you. You've made peace with your past. You've stopped abandoning yourself for love. And you've built a life that honors your worth, not just on good days, but every day. This kind of strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It's in the calm way you say no without guilt, the way you walk away from chaos without needing to explain yourself, the way your silence says, "I've outgrown this pain." Because now, you don't chase people. You don't chase closure. You don't chase validation. You've learned that everything you were looking for in others, safety, love, approval, was something you had to find in yourself first. And now that you have, you've become your own home. You hold space for your emotions without drowning in them. You give love without losing yourself in the process. You forgive without forgetting who you are. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of wholeness. Not perfection, not blissful ignorance, but integration. The dark and the light, the fear and the courage, the pain and the power, all living within you, not as enemies, but as parts of the same soul. And once you accept that, no one can use your past against you. No one can break what you've already healed. No one can steal a piece they didn't give you. You stop reacting to the old wounds, because they're not open anymore. You've stitched them with self-trust. You've sealed them with clarity. You've turned them into wisdom. This is what becoming untouchable feels like. Not above the world, but grounded within yourself. There's a stillness here, a quiet knowing. And when you live from that space, your life begins to reflect it. The people you attract change. The way you speak to yourself softens. The decisions you make begin to honor the version of you who finally believes, "I am safe now. I am whole, and I am done suffering for what wasn't my fault." This is what Carl Jung was guiding us toward all along. Not escape, but embodiment. Not avoidance, but awareness. Not fear, but freedom. So if you've made it this far, You're already becoming that version of yourself. Now the only thing left is to keep going. Because healing doesn't end, it evolves. And every day you get to choose to live with truth, to walk in peace, to stay connected to the power that no one can take from you. You've made it this far. So now, let's talk about what comes next. Your turn. So here you are. Not at the end of the story, but standing at the beginning of something new. You've walked through the shadow. You've faced the pain. You've remembered your worth. And now, it's your turn. Your turn to stop waiting for permission to heal. Your turn to stop shrinking for the comfort of others. Your turn to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Because from this moment forward, you get to choose how your story unfolds. Not from fear, not from old patterns, but from a place of deep, quiet power. You've met the parts of you that were hidden, hurting, misunderstood, and you didn't turn away. You listened, you stayed, you held space. That's courage, that's strength, that's healing in its most human form. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And now, you've been given that privilege. Not just by surviving your past, but by finally seeing yourself, clearly, honestly, completely. So what comes next? Small steps, honest choices, gentle boundaries, radical self-respect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to begin. You already carry the wisdom. You already hold the map. And now, you get to walk your path. One breath, one truth, one act of self-love at a time. The pain no longer leads you. The fear no longer silences you. The past no longer defines you. You've come home to yourself. And from here on out, you protect that peace like it's sacred, because it is. So take this moment, breathe it in, let it settle in your bones. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were just buried beneath everything that tried to convince you otherwise. But now you've risen. And now you know. Nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Because now you see yourself. You trust yourself. You belong to yourself. And that changes everything. Welcome to the rest of your life. You're not just healing. You're becoming whole. You're not just surviving. You're finally free.